Our next panel is very important to us because it really strikes at the heart of the sports business ecosystem, and that is our annual Los Angeles Economic Development Sports Insight report that they publish. The economists at LAEDC spend a lot of time compiling this from data that's available to us mostly in the public domain, but we're exceptionally proud of the work that they do and the fact that we can represent it as part of this conference. So our next two, our moderator is board member Merryll McElwain. She's Senior Vice President and Senior Wealth Advisor for Wilmington Trust. So we're going to welcome Merryll up to the stage, if you would. And her guest is the president of Los Angeles Economic Development Commission and World Trade LA, Stephen Cheung.
Let's go Dodgers. Let's go Clippers. Happy to be a part of this. Wilmington Trust, this is our second year partnering with the LAEDC on the Sports Impact Report. So we're proud to be able to do that and happy to have this discussion with Stephen today. Stephen, would you mind giving just a brief background on the report itself, how it came to be, how many years now, and then we'll dive into it.
Sure. So this is actually a fourth report that we've done for this particular industry. We started in 2019, and the next year, unfortunately, COVID hit, so we took a little bit of a hiatus, but we came back over the last 3 years. It's so important to basically get the data and get the trends so you can see the growth and the changes that are happening throughout the entire region. So this report is now our fourth year. Now we're able to see the trend line specifically over the last 3 years coming out of COVID, what that means. So it's really great insights, and it's actually shaping what LA could look like in the future.
Awesome, and that actually leads me to my next question is really, where have we come since the pandemic?
So we've fully recovered. So that's a huge thing for us. As we looked at, I'm going to step back a little bit. So LADC, we do a number of different reports, and I'm one of those data nerds that get really excited about data. The reason why it's so exciting for us is because when we looked at some of the previous data, COVID did a number on LA. I think we all felt it, but the thing is when you quantify it, you start seeing the devastation that we felt. In the first 2 months of COVID, in March and April of 2020, LA lost approximately 700,000 jobs. 700,000 jobs, that's a lot of jobs, right? And it took us over 2 years to recover, but not every single industry recovered the same way because there's still limitation in terms of experiences, whether people want to get back together and be in crowded situations. So sports and entertainment is such a huge component of our economy, and to see it fully recovered, that means a lot. So the number might be just basically a number for most, but for us who are tracking the trend, this is amazing, amazing news for us.
That's great. It's so good to hear. And I know we've had a great year since our last report, too. You want to dive into where we've come just over the last year in terms of growth and revenues and attendance?
Yeah. So we look at the top line number. The number that we would like to tell folks is that the sports sector, the professional sports team, the collegiate sports teams here in the Los Angeles region, last year in 2022, when we did the last report, it was about an $8.9 billion economic impact. That's huge for this entire region, right? This year, we just reached $11.7 billion. So this is having amazing, amazing economic impact. And as the world is looking at Los Angeles, most of the time they think of Los Angeles, they think of Hollywood, Hollywood, Hollywood. Well, we want them to know that there's more than just Hollywood. Sports is a huge thing here, which we'll get into why it's so huge. And that's why that top line number is going to be very important. The other thing to look at as well is the jobs that are supported. When it comes to economic development, we want to make sure that we have good paying jobs in this entire region. So the number now is about 83,000 jobs, about 84,000 jobs that are supported directly or indirectly by this entire sector. That's a lot of jobs. And by the way, the average wage for this particular sector is approximately $106,000 a year. those are really good jobs. So we want to make sure that this industry continues to grow so that we can have more jobs and more entrepreneurship opportunities for all of Los Angeles, especially for some of the communities that often have been left behind. And LA is so big that not every single sector or every community is actually growing back the same way. And so to see the investments like the Intuit Dome and what Gillian was talking about, the investment into local community is so key to the resiliency and also the vibrancy of our economy.
And where do you see let's call it career pathing? Where do you see those opportunities for jobs, especially for minorities and for people who may have exited that workforce or haven't even entered it yet? Where do you see those coming from in the future?
Well, this sector is so diverse in the sense that when folks think of certain sector, they make automatic assumptions, right? So a lot of times when you think of the sports sector, you think of you have to be a professional athlete to be in this particular sector. But as you can see, as Gillian was talking about as well, as Dave was kind of facilitating that conversation, you can imagine that besides the sporting events alone, when Bruno Mars is here, you're going to basically have to do the entire set design, the sound stage, the lighting, the technology that's going to be involved. So now this entire sector is creating new opportunities. One of the things I was taking note as a previous conversation was happening is when they were talking about the facial recognition technology that's here, because Intuit Dome has adopted this technology, you can imagine a lot of companies from around the world, including French companies that are here today with Business Friends, they're going to see what the opportunities are and how do you take those technology to be able to start getting into a market like Los Angeles with all these amazing facilities that are going to be developed. So the job opportunities, to answer your question, is not just a traditional athletics, but it's also events management, it's also technology, it's also environmental sustainability. So this sector is actually driving other sectors throughout the entire region, and the job opportunities in many ways are limitless. What we need to do right now is make sure that our next generation of workers, not only young workers, but also displaced workers, folks that have been displaced from other sectors during COVID, can enter this entire system so that they can continue to support the growth of it. I'll add one last point. The reason why I'm so big on making sure that we're supporting the growth of this sector is that, don't forget, we didn't always have football teams and other professional sports teams here. We now have a lot to boast about. But we can't take it for granted because there was a time when LA lost our sports teams. So how do we make sure that we're able to compete and make sure that these sports teams continue to invest in our communities?
Yeah, and a part of that is making sure that fans can really get to the games, right? And then I know we're doing a lot from a transportation standpoint just to get ready for the Olympics. I'm seeing it in my neighborhood. We've already taken out a lane on Sepulveda, a lane on Ventura to create bus lanes. Seeing it in the Valley, seeing it with the new metro, right? So how are we making sure that we continue to develop that so that obviously people can have more access, and what are kind of the upcoming plans maybe for transportation as well?
Yeah, so I think we just briefly just touch on the Olympic Games right now, so I'll jump into it. Yesterday, I was at another conference event talking specifically about mega events, and folks are focusing on the Olympic Games in LA 28, and everybody's saying, oh my God, is LA 28 and the Olympic Games gonna solve world hunger and solve homelessness? And no, that's not what they're gonna do. But what we can do is utilize the Olympic Games as a way for us to catalyze some of the work that's been done. So we've seen that for those of you who are from Los Angeles, Measure R and Measure M, we've created these tax measures so that we can create transportation systems for the Los Angeles region. So you've been seeing investments over the last 2 decades. And folks forget that we didn't always have connection from downtown to Santa Monica by rail. And as that's coming through, what we need to do is make sure that we increase ridership, increase connectivity. So before the Olympic Games, you're going to see that LAX is going to be finally connected by rail to the rest of the lines. Westwood is going to have a major station, and that's going to be anticipated the busiest station in the entire metro system, right? So all of these things are going to start transforming and changing the way that we're going to move. And so in the future, that's the major events as well as the facilities and stadiums is going to play a significant part of that, because by them encouraging more public transportation usage, you're going to see behavior changing. I'll say that, for example, during the Eras Tour with Taylor Swift being at SoFi Stadium, you saw an increase in ridership. Metro is tracking it by female riders, because a lot of women, they don't feel safe taking public transportation. But because there was really no option and they really increased the safety during that time, you can see they're increasing the female ridership. The question is basically, can we maintain it after that particular event? And if you can make sure that every single major sporting event that are going forth, we continue to provide that kind of access and assistance, it's going to change the way that we're going to move LA altogether.
Love it. We're obviously in the newest, most amazing sports venue in LA right now. We have, SoFi Stadium, which came in a few years ago. How does real estate, LA Basin is such a broad area, but how does real estate play into the economic impact of the sports industry?
Yeah. So, as again, I'm referring back to Gillian's conversation. Investing here, looking for a major piece of property, it's not easy. But when you do that, you actually transform the entire region as a whole. You start seeing now new businesses and new ecosystems and corridors that are being formed in order to serve this mega sporting facilities and entertainment center. You've seen that. Looking back at history, 20, 30 years ago, maybe even a bit more now, downtown Los Angeles didn't have that vibrancy that it does now. Yes, during COVID, we scaled back down a little bit, but LA Live wasn't there. That was just a big parking lot that people didn't want to go to. But because LA Live is there and the investment was there, it just basically created an entire investment opportunity, including housing and different things that were there as well. So the same thing is happening right now in Inglewood. And as we're moving forward, we're seeing the additional investment in terms of training facilities, in terms of other ancillary supportive services. So whenever you have major sporting teams and facilities are investing in real estate, you have these ancillary effect that sometimes we just take it for granted and we forget that it wasn't always there. So for us as economic developers, this is super exciting because it's now creating opportunities for not only locally serving companies, whether it's food and beverage and marketing support and experiences, it's going to be very timely. Because also, as we're moving forward, don't forget, it's not the Olympic Games, it's going to be the only major games. We're going to be hosting the FIFA World Cup, 8 games of that. Super Bowl is coming back in 2027. NBA All-Star Game is going to be right here. US Open Championship for golf is coming back in, I think, 2026 for women, 2031 and 2039 for men, and 2033 for women. World Rugby Championship, we're candidate cities in 2031 for men and 2033 for women. Rugby, Los Angeles, who knew, right? So these are all the exciting things that are coming up, so it's all linked in together.
I love it, and I'm a Rams and Chargers season ticket holder and got to see the new Chargers facility recently with some of the other board members, and it was really cool, and I'm really excited to see what happens in Woodland Hills. After they start to build out, the Rams are obviously building out there, like what comes around that? I remember seeing when I got the Rams tickets, the plans for Inglewood, and it's really cool to see them now kind of building out and coming to fruition. So you mentioned the rugby. So we were talking earlier, and I said that there were 12 pro teams here, and there's 8 universities, and Stephen corrected me. We actually have 13 professional teams now, including
the Rugby Football Club of Los Angeles that called Los Angeles home.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's very recent.
Yeah, just recent, yeah.
Yeah, well, so that's not necessarily reflected in this last report, but the report is really kind of divided up among the pro teams and the universities. Can you talk a little bit about how those two interact with each other, maybe some differentiators and how they support the economy and key findings there between them?
Yeah. Oh, first, the Rugby Football Club is not included in this report because our report is looking at last year's data. Okay. So they just basically moved here at end of last year, so they'll be included in this upcoming report, which we're very excited about. So for us, we're looking at the economic output for each one of these sectors, and we divide it into professional versus collegiate. I mentioned this $11.7 billion economic output. The professional sports team have $9.9 billion of that. So almost $10 billion came from professional sports team. And the collegiate sports teams that we're talking about have about $1.8 billion in economic output, with about 56 collegiate programs throughout this entire region. They support about 17,000 student athletes that contribute to this entire ecosystem. So, don't forget the Rose Bowl, don't forget the Coliseum when UCLA, USC, and other sports teams play. They actually draw a big crowd as well, whether it's at USC at the Galen Center or the Wynn Center at UCLA, and also Pepperdine and LMU and all these professional sports teams, Cal State Long Beach. So you actually have a very good supportive system. And as we're looking at feeding into the professional sports teams as well, it's been quite interesting to see, for example, that if you just look at California alone, and mostly from Southern California, during the Paris Olympic game, just the athletes that we produce are the size of most countries and what they send. So these collegiate system is actually influencing the future of sports for not only this region, but for the world.
Yeah, amazing. The report also dives into some emerging sports. Maybe just give a little bit of info on what kind of trends you're seeing, maybe some sports that you really see emerging, but also are there any that you're seeing declining that we need to be aware of and maybe get more support out for?
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen soccer being really, really adopted here in Los Angeles, and people are so excited not only about, especially recently. When I say recently, over the last few years, when Angel Cities arrived, the first female professional soccer league here. That's just transformed the way that we have viewed what participation and what engagement looks like. And then now we are seeing pickleball. The Major League Pickleball League is coming to Los Angeles, and there's so many different things that are happening when it comes to different events. When it comes to decline, I think what we're seeing is actually their uptakes in most professional sports team participation, right? When it comes to attendance rate for all the professional sports team, whether it's hockey, whether it's baseball, whether combined together, it's about 4.3% increase. So it's a good trend to have. However, I always want to make sure that with the good, we always promise to give you the good, bad, and ugly. Don't take it for granted. Again, we sometimes in Los Angeles, we accept the good and we complain about the bad. We have to make sure that we're able to retain our investors that have invested in this community, and that's why we need to make sure that we're supporting and working very closely with all the professional sports team to make sure that this is growing, and then attracting new sports as well. I'll bring up one point that's not in the report that I'm actually really excited about. Looking at the Olympic Games coming up in 2028, we're going to be able to introduce new sports, and we'll be introducing cricket at the LA 28 Olympic Games, right? This is going to be huge because it's one of the most popular sports in the world, and because of our direct connection, especially right now with India. For those of you who are aware, our former mayor for Los Angeles City, Eric Garcetti, is now the ambassador to India, and he, was instrumental in terms of attracting the Olympic Games coming over here. So this connection with India is going to be huge for us, especially since we just got a new consulate that have been announced by the Indian government and the US government that will be opened here in Los Angeles. And with that, all these connections are great, and then we're, fingers crossed, we'll be seeing a direct nonstop flight from LA to India. So combined together for what we're seeing is the opportunity for using sports as a way to tie the two regions together and really increase tourism, but using sports as a way to drive that industry. So I want to do a quick plug. Our partner and friend, Global LA, Terry Hatcher here, she's over there. Global LA has been working very, very diligently to make sure that we have these global connections with the rest of the world. And so if you don't know Global LA, please connect with Terry, because it's so important for us to work combined together to market Los Angeles as a destination for these global sporting events.
Thank you. I think we're getting pretty close to time. So why don't we just sum it up with, let's go back to the report and the importance of the report and why this data tracking is an effort that we need to continue, on this annual report every year.
Well, I think LA is such a fantastic place with all these different things. That's the benefit. But at the same time, it's also a challenge because we have so many different things that are happening in Los Angeles. we get distracted very easily. And when we don't think about the impact of this particular industry, and we have to see it as an industry, then we take it for granted, and other folks basically start paying attention to, for example, Hollywood. Hollywood. It's always Hollywood. Look, Hollywood is fantastic, but when you actually look at the numbers, Hollywood is actually the third largest industry in the Los Angeles region, not number one. Why are they able to suck up all the oxygen in every single room? They do a good job. Again, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. Good for them. But tourism is also another sector that's above them when it comes to job creation, right? Trade and logistics. And then now sports and entertainment is now rising, and it's going to be dominating. So we need to make sure that we have the numbers to be able to look at the trends, to see what are the gaps, and to see the opportunities, so we can make sure that we're able to attract businesses here. I'll give you, again, the good, bad, and ugly. Just to close it out is that this, I don't want us to look at it and just basically seeing, oh my God, everybody's coming over here, we're all good. There are challenges. We know that Los Angeles also have seen a decline when it comes to some of the companies that are not staying here. We have a lot of great companies that are coming in, but we need to make sure we're attracting new companies, and this will create job opportunities for the future. If you don't have competitive industries, your restaurants, your dry cleaners, your locally serving companies are not serving anybody. So we need to make sure that we're able to serve these industries. And the other thing is this, in our economic report, another economic report that we do, we have anticipated that by 2034, in the next 10 years, LA's population will drop to about 9.5 million people. We used to have 10.2 million people before COVID. That's 700,000 less people in Los Angeles. The other thing is we're also seeing a retirement group, that the silver tsunami that people talked about. That didn't go away. We just stopped talking about it. So our entire workforce in the next few years will be completely different. When you have 700,000 less people, I mean, that's the size of most major US cities, right? So we need to make sure that our workforce is trained and connected, and that's why it's so important to utilize these numbers to understand where the opportunities are, so we can work with the high schools, work with the middle schools, work with the community colleges, work with the universities, to make sure we're developing the talent pool that's able to attract these amazing sports teams, amazing venues, amazing programs, so that we can have good jobs, good entrepreneurship opportunities, and great investments to our local communities.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Let's give Stephen a hand. Really appreciate it.